Hey everyone, welcome to Voluntary Virtues Roundtable every Tuesday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Really glad you guys could make it tonight. We have a wonderful show lined up for you guys tonight. A lot to talk about. If you guys didn't catch it, for those who haven't, make sure you guys check out our upload section where you'll find a recent interview that I just did with Jeffrey Tucker, as well as about 100 other shows that we have on this network. We're growing every day. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, which is actually kind of low. But we're growing fast, and this is kind of a recent development here within the last few weeks. I've been away doing other things, but we're trying to push a little bit more into the network, and it's really good to see all the support that we have behind the scenes here that maybe some of the viewers don't really recognize. So I want to thank, a little shout out to everybody out there who's helped us build this up and who will continue to help us build it up. Today we've got a wonderful show. When I say that, I'm not talking like a
Sorry about that, guys. It looks like we might have had some technical difficulties along the way with Michael Shanklin. So, welcome everyone. While he gets that fixed, welcome everyone to the Voluntary Virtues Network, the round table normally hosted by Michael Shanklin, and there he back is. So I'm gonna give it back to him, but hopefully everything is taken care of. You all right there?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this. It just seems like every time I log on to Google Hangouts with the Surface Pro 3, it always does this. I don't know. I'll have to look into it later on. We also have Marky and we have Robert Kruger here as well as Chuck. So glad to see the people that we do have. Lauren Rumpler is about to come in right now too. And tonight our guest is out of, I think he's actually in Austria right now, although I think he's of Dutch.
Yes.
It's not like it matters really. Is that correct? His name's...
He's in Austria, yeah.
Okay. His name is Yurnaz, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, Ramatarsing? Am I saying that right, Lauren?
I'm not sure. You'll have to ask him.
Well, he can't blame me. I mean, it's not like...
No.
Alrighty. No, good stuff. We got. He was just recently on Dutch national TV defending Ayn Rand. He's an objectivist, holds on to the minarchy position, but we've had other minarchists on the show before. It always creates good discussion. We get to see where people are coming from, connect to them on hopefully a different level. Actually, years ago, I think when most of us started doing something philosophical or political, most of us were in that minarchist position and mindset as well. So it's really good to see people who are willing to at least create the discussion, and maybe we can push that forward into a more coherent, more complete type of philosophy, something like an ANCAP ideal system.
I mean, I'd still be a minarchist if you guys didn't get a hold of me, so...
Well, I think, we don't want to take all the credit. You changed yourself. We just kind of helped. And the same thing, I changed myself. Other people just kind of helped me allow me to change myself. But I know what you mean, so I'll take the compliment. How you doing tonight, Lauren? You doing good?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited. I think that this will be really good for Yurnaz. He is a good friend of mine, even though he's a closed objectivist. He's really important to me. He has helped me with a lot of different things, and I think that he'll be enlightening to the group, but I think that the group will be even more enlightening to him.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad to see that you were able to make it. The last few times I think that I was on here, I missed you, except for, I don't know, I've had a really busy last month, but it's good to see you on the show.
Missing each other, which is really sad.
Oh, we're good though. Well, it only means that we're going to have it's only uphill for good from here on out, I guess I should say. Anyway, let's move on. Robert Kruger, good to see you. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I wanted to ask Lauren, what's a closed objectivist?
So the difference is which philosophy you are a part of. So basically, there's the Ayn Rand Institute and there's the Atlas Society. And I work as an intern for the Atlas Society separately than my Objectivist Girl show. They're not related. And so, and then there's the Ayn Rand Institute, which is what Yurnaz is a part of. He doesn't technically work there, but he is closer with them. They don't believe in the principle of benevolence, and open objectivists do, and it's basically open objectivism is based on objective reality, and closed objectivism is based on Ayn Rand. And so it's like, you know how the other day I was on the night show with you, Robert, and someone called me a Randite, and they were corrected. Right, they were corrected, a Randian. That's a Randian, and they were corrected. He is actually a Randian.
Oh, okay.
But you shouldn't call him that. It's still kind of derogatory. But yes, if there are people that are Randians, it is the closed objectivists. We don't take, open objectivists don't take everything Ayn Rand said literally. So it's really funny because a lot of people kind of compare it to, like, I mean, some people still think it's religious, and so people compare it to, like, the Christians who interpret the Bible or the Baptists that take it literally. So
interesting. No, good info, and great question, Robert. Glad to have you on the show here. It looks like we also have Chuck and Marky. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing good. I can't complain. Staying pretty busy, but other than that, doing great. So let's go into some of the topics real quick before we do bring on Urnaz. I sent him the link. If you guys can send him the broadcast link and get him into the room while I go over the current events that we're going to be going over later on after him, that would be great. I sent him the link earlier, but hopefully he's trying to get in right now. Anyway, before we do get to Urnaz, I want to discuss what's going on in Venezuela. There's it's a horrific situation because they're rationing food with the fingerprinting system. So in other words, they're going to be using fingerprints. The government is going to be instituting, hopefully, most likely in January, not hopefully, unfortunately, I should say, where they take fingerprints and they'll fingerprint people, and if you come back and the computer is having too many of the XYZ widgets, loaves of bread or gallons of milk, then you've had too much. They're going to basically say what is too much for some person, right? I don't know what measurements they're going to base it on, if it's based on weight. We'll get more into that, though, but it really highlights, sadly, the socialism in action. You could see this, obviously, in North Korea and Cuba, and in this case, Venezuela as well. Also, a horrific story, you know, that Pop-Tart gun story that you heard about where the kid got banned for making the Pop-Tart into a gun. Silly stuff. Another incident that's absolutely ridiculous has recently happened where a little boy, I think he was like 8 or 10, I'll have to look at the actual stats, he had an assignment to write up a thing that was like explaining him, and of course he might have been joking around and not taking the assignment seriously, but he wrote about how he was going to use a gun to shoot a dinosaur. It was something fictional. He knew it was a joke the whole time. He's not psychotic. He's not going to go shoot anybody with a gun. But he was arrested for it. The school had him arrested. We'll get into more of that in the wonderful public school system here shortly. Also, there's something that everybody talks about: public charity, or I guess I should say public taxation and public programs, government programs, as alleviating poverty and increasing literacy rates, etc. But it goes almost against every bit of historical and empirical evidence that we have throughout of almost all history. When you actually look at private funding, we're going to look at a situation where a gentleman out in Florida actually helped fund some preschool and a bunch of different things in this small town, and how it basically completely turned the system around. $10 million over a couple decades, which when you actually think of all the government money that's spent, it's minuscule, comparative. We're going to talk more about that. I don't want to give away too many details on that. Also, I want to talk about, there's been a new video that was released this year that gives a documentary on the West Philly bombing. I'm sure a lot of you guys understand what happened with the MOVE organization. Some people call it a cult, other people call it an organization, teach his own. But I wanted to basically go over that real quickly for those who don't understand what happened in West Philly with the West Philly bombing, and kind of, I don't know, quickly summarize the documentary, as well as giving my 2 cents on it from a voluntarist perspective, at least my independent voluntarist perspective. Also, I think it's important to point out where it is that you can get the best customer service almost in the world, and maybe outside of being an extremely rich country club goer, right? For the average Joe, It's actually the black market with illegal drugs. We're going to talk more about how its wonderful customer service is bringing repeat business, and of course how the state can't do anything about it. Also, I want to talk about a 20-year-old who was recently killed. He was walking outside of a gas station. Supposedly there was a call that had gone in stating that there was somebody waving a gun in some area. Anyway, the police run around the corner, frantically see the kid, and shoot him. He was unarmed. They told him to do something, but he had headphones on, so he couldn't hear them, and they got shot. No gun in his hand or anything. His friends watching on in shock and disbelief. I guess it would be shocking to people who don't pay attention to this kind of stuff, because I see it all the time now. And it's been going on for a long time. You just didn't see it on camera because the technology wasn't here to help expose all of the criminal actions from the police. But we're going to get more into that here in a little bit, as well as the fact that Burger King is buying out a subsection of Dunkin' Donuts. I think it's, I don't know all the details of it, without going into the actual notes on it, which we'll get here later on. But they're doing this so that they can basically, in essence, if you want to think of this as intangibly, because it's not like they have to pick up physically and move, but they're changing the location of their company to Canada. And for the reasons I'm going to tell you why, I'm going to blow your mind, because 20 or 30 years ago you'd be saying that's impossible. You'd be laughing this off as it would never happen. But they're moving to Canada to avoid corporate tax rates. I'm not joking you. That's how bad America's getting and gotten, and of course is going to unfortunately go down like the rest of the world with so much government that it just pulls them into third world nation status. But I don't want to waste another minute. Have we gotten a chance to get Urnaz on the line yet? It doesn't look like it, guys. Anybody got in contact with him?
So I'm talking to him, and he is trying to get in and having a lot of trouble.
Ask him if he's using a mobile device.
He is.
Yep, I'm telling you guys, you can never invite people on with mobile devices.
Yeah.
You have to tell them you have to have a real PC. So, all right, have we ever gotten a fix around for that? I don't think so. Kruger?
No, we haven't gotten that yet. You certainly you've got the email address over there on the side. If you could try sending him an invite through email, that might help.
Sure. Alrighty, I see it over here. So anyway, guys, we do have a great show for you. I'm going to go ahead and send Urnaz a discussion. Also, I want to go over, while I'm doing this, if somebody can actually put it into a Facebook chat so I can copy and paste it, so I can actually do the show while I do this, because unfortunately I can't have a proxy account helping me with it. I want to give away some bumper stickers while we're doing this, while we're trying to get somebody to help me copy that and paste that over. I want to give away some bumper stickers. I got a variety of bumper stickers I want to give away. Hold on a second. The first one I think you guys are going to love. Oh, and to get the bumper stickers, just leave a comment in the comment section on actual YouTube video itself, not on the website. And or just share the video with your friends or on your Facebook page or whatever. The I Voluntarist You bumper stickers is one of the hottest sellers, so I'm giving these away absolutely free. I can't give every single person one, but I can give away a couple. So those who are leaving comments, you might get the chance to get them sent to your house for free. This one's also awesome. Lysander Spooner. A man is no less a slave because he's allowed to choose a new master once in a term of years. Lysander Spooner. Also, you guys can go to nonaggression-apparel.com and check out. There we go. And check out all of the bumper stickers. All you have to do is just click on the bumper sticker thing in the shop section, and it's easy. We have, I think, almost 20 bumper stickers at this point and growing every single day, so I'm really excited about that. But we also have the lifetime membership, too, so you pay $50. There, I sent the invite. You pay $50 and you get every single bumper sticker, 2 of each one, and 2 shirts included, and free shipping, and whatever new bumper stickers we add for life you get. We only have 25 of those, and we've had 7 people claim the lifetime membership so far. So thanks to those who are supporting us. Really awesome stuff, and the store is booming. The more stuff that's sold, that means the more people will be able to see the message of voluntarism. That's the whole point. That's one of the reasons why I opened up a little shop like this. I could have taken the capital investment and done something else with it, right? But I did this for a reason. I mean, that's it's not only supporting the family, but it's also spreading the message of freedom at the same time. So, guys, we don't have Urnaz on here. You know, we've known about this mobile issue for a long time. So I'm not going to bet on us getting near Nas unless he can get to another computer like a real PC, like an actual real PC. I don't think this is going to happen tonight. So I'm saying we just go straight over into the actual current events. Who's down with me?
I think
Hello.
that sounds like a good idea.
All right.
That's unfortunate. I'm going to try and see if I can have him on another time, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully, I mean, if we can get him on, then that's great, but let's just go ahead and go on to the topics. I was able to watch almost all of the video that you shared about the bombing in Philadelphia. That was quite something.
Did you see the end of it where they walked in the alley? Did you? I don't want to say give it away, but did you see that part?
Yeah.
Okay. At the end?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the automatic firing, obviously they didn't find any automatic weapons inside of the MOVE complex. It was obviously the police who were just killing the innocent children as they were running out. Absolutely disgusting. You can hear the police saying, they'll never call us motherfuckers again as they're murdering them. It's really sad. But to those who don't know, a bunch of people, this is a while back, in Philadelphia were very, very upset at the police brutality that was happening to the African American community. Obviously, they felt that it was institutionalized segregation, not necessarily that. Basically, that they felt that they were being police brutality and being abused by the police, and they didn't want to take it anymore. A lot of them said, "We're done with this." You know, some of them were actually more proactive, and some of the people in the community didn't even want to support this movement. They thought it was a bunch of nothing. It was going to just create more problems than it was going to solve. To each their own. I think you can basically point to either side and say that they did something good and that they both did something bad. As far as the individuals in the community and the two sects, not necessarily including the police at all. But what you had was a bunch of people upset with the police brutality, and so they actually moved into this area and they started fortifying the compound. And then they actually started to making bunkers out of the top of this building, and they started having armed guards standing right outside of the building too. The reason that they said they did this at the beginning was because they were already in a war. They felt like just living around the police was a war, and that because they felt like they were already going to get beaten and shot at, that if they at least gave the presence like they were there for defense, then it made more real. It made the war zone that they felt that they were living in more real to everybody else, to help them see that it really was a war zone and that they felt that they had to take these precautions. And so they would have demonstrations in front of the police department, and they would say, F you, police, you guys abuse us, we don't like you, you steal our money, you're a harm to us and to our civilization, society, etc. And to many extents, they were absolutely correct. They were being abused. There was police brutality there. It was institutionalized racism based from the state. Was people inside of the state who were racist were pinpointing people from the opposite race and attacking them, and they knew that they're easy game inside of a court system. They don't have the funds to protect themselves with lawyers, etc. So they're basically sitting ducks. And they know this. They can basically drain them through taxation citations all day long, right? And so these people are upset, protest outside the police station, create this fortified bunker, and the police wanted to stop it. It kept growing because the police kept doing police brutality. The police brutality's never stopped. They don't have a documentary on that, as much at least. But you do have one on the people from the MOVE organization. So they formed this organization called MOVE. People moved in together, and what happened was the police actually started to move in to issue arrest warrants on people. I'm sure they were trumped up charges for things that some of the people that were involved, probably their victimless crimes or felony charges that probably wouldn't be actually held liable inside of a courtroom, but they had to put something on paper to try to attack this complex who kept calling the emperor with no clothing out right in front of them, right? And so they did this, and they ended up moving in on the compound, and there was gunfires that happened, gunfire, and there was actually children inside of the basement at the time, and one of the police officers actually ended up getting shot and died. 2 others were injured, and I believe there was 6 people in all inside of the house that were injured. The police lied the whole time, said that they were shooting bullets above, up and over the house, but the whole time they were actually shooting the bullets inside of the house, thousands and thousands of bullets. And of course, sadly, people died. And of course, right after the last person walks out of the room, they had kind of a standoff for a couple hours. And finally, the people inside of the MOVE organization building, gave up. And as they're coming out, they just started beating the crap out of them. Absolutely started beating the living
keep in mind,
crap out
there
of
was two actual two different instances where they had
True.
confrontations. And the first one was several years prior, and in that one, was it John Africa? Was his nickname?
John Africa, I thought he was around for the second one afterwards.
He was in the first one and the second one.
Yeah. So that's not the same guy. The first one is in prison and has been ever since the first one.
Right. Okay. Well, in any case, there were two separate altercations. So anyway, just so you know, we were able to get is it Yurniz on, but then
just lost him.
off.
Yeah.
So well, that's
no,
just
keep me
great.
updated on this. Yeah, no, let's move on with the West. I'm almost done. We're over halfway done with the West Philly story because I do want to talk about this.
Yeah.
So let me finish the summarization up real quick. So these people ended up, some of them ended up going to jail, but others had fled over to New York City, and some of them had actually been picked up in New York City. And in a few years, things started to really settle down in the Philly area, right? But years later, police brutality kept being a thing, and people started getting upset about it once again. The police brutality never went away. The thing that's initially creating all this upsetment with the violent monopoly with the state police, that never went away. So these people still, of course, once again got upset, created another MOVE organization. This time it turned into something bigger, and it ended up having bombs from helicopters being dropped on these complexes. It created a huge fire, burnt down a lot of the African American community's houses, and I'm talking blocks of houses just burned up, and it was a lot of hatred coming from the state officials themselves. Even though one of them, the mayor, was actually African American himself, they kept some of the people in the community called him Uncle Tom, and he tried to plead that he was always feeling with the people or whatever. You can see right through the statism when you actually take a step back and look at it. But the reality of the situation was the state outright attacked these people 2 times for simply protesting and basically pretty brutally saying we're going to defend ourselves against your invasion. This right here is, to me, a perfect example of the state and the violent monopoly, the police sector, this thing that you don't have a choice in, of really just proving that it has no customer service. It doesn't have to think about its customers whatsoever, its clients. It's not really there to protect and serve you. It's there to protect and serve itself. That's what the state's always done. Robert, what have I missed from the story? And go ahead and give me your summarization of it and what you thought about the movie.
Okay, well, after they had the first encounter, which basically this group tried to establish a new, counterculture type of society where they didn't want to have, use any technology. They wouldn't wear clothes, things of that nature. It was just really an odd kind of a society, and it was very different from what people were used to. They didn't understand how to negotiate with these people. They didn't understand how to relate to these people. People in the neighborhood that they were at were feeling uncomfortable with the fact that they were using profanity in a very large amount of profanity being used. They were upset about people not keeping their homes in certain level.
And the loudspeaker too was a big concern. That's what a lot of them were really upset with.
Yeah. So there was a lot of shouting and being upset about the things that the government was doing regarding the treatment of the blacks in that neighborhood. So when the police came in, they were very, very brutally beating this man. They said that the man was displaying aggression, that he was fighting them, but the video shows that absolutely he was being cooperative. He put his hands up, and then when the guy was interviewed about it, I forget what his role was, but his response was, You can't just expect to come walking out there after killing one of our own and expect to be treated with kid gloves. He should be glad that he actually was able to live.
After they attacked his private property.
Yeah. So this asshole thinks that we should be grateful that the beating wasn't more severe. Is basically what he's saying. Then, when they moved to this new location, there was a lot of people who were upset in the neighborhood because this movement was threatening their lives. Saying things like, "Well, we're going to break into your house and rape your wife," things like that. So the police were responding in some regard to this, posturing that was aggressive and it was threatening, and so I don't think that it was necessarily a bad idea that there should be some sort of use of force to deal with this problematic group. However, they let the situation escalate and escalate, and then they themselves actually escalated the situation by entering in with tear gas, smoke bombs, water, firing water into these homes and so on. It was just it was a complete mess. But the thing that is very clear is that at several points in time they lied about whether they fired weapons. There was definitely evidence to show that there were innocent children who were killed outside of the fire that occurred in the home in question, and then they were moved into the home afterwards to try to cover up the fact that they were just outright slaughtered when they were trying to escape, including children. So definitely a lot of bad actions going from the police department, but certainly these people weren't exactly innocent. So I guess that's the only thing.
Yeah. Well, I think when I look at the two sides here, I see people who were reacting to being brutalized, really. I mean, that's what happened. The police had a pretty bad streak towards, action-wise towards this group of people for a very long time. There was a lot of tension there, obviously. And not only that, it was their private property. So, I think David Friedman has said this best himself. What are you going to do about families that that are just, they're not going to take care of the roaches and they're blasting their music next to you? What's going to happen in Anarcho-Capitalism land? The reality is, in a voluntary society, they're going to have people who might not, have running water in their house. They might turn up their music to 100 decibels, and you might have to live with that. The ANCAP might be a really loud, annoying place sometimes, and I think that's what happened here. These people were like all the bad sides of voluntarism. Like, not that voluntarism has a bad side, because voluntarism itself is just voluntary interactions with others. But from that, it's not everything that comes off that is cherries and ice cream, right? There's some bads that happen out of this. People have conflicting ways of living, etc. And so what happened is these people were pretty loud on the loudspeaker. They owned guns that the city didn't think people should be owning. They broke every victimless crime law out there, and a system that needs victimless crimes, the state, to survive, couldn't be just allowing this to happen. And so it was really a headbutt of two completely different cultures. Now, I am not saying a voluntary society is leading to what he is. He was just, some of the really bad, annoying parts of a voluntary society were really there. I can't think of one thing that they really did that would have been against an ANCAP society. Anything that Move did, really. Maybe blaring the music too loud?
Yeah. That's a violation of somebody else's property rights. If you've homesteaded an area and your level of sound.
No, I agree. But what else? Let's go. What
else?
Is there?
They threatened violence against some of the homeowners in the second interaction, specifically with the intent to get these homeowners pissed off enough that they would contact the authorities and demand that they do something. I don't know. I thought that was kind of a really.
What direct tactics did they do? I don't remember. I'm sure they did. I'm just trying to.
Some of the neighbors said that they were threatened with physical violence. That specifically, somebody said that he was told that we're going to break into your house and we're going to rape your wife.
That's right.
He was specifically told that, and so whether he's making that up or not, I don't know. But as far as I can tell, they are actually admitting to the fact that they were very abusive towards their neighbors, intentionally so, as to get
a reaction.
A reaction, so that they could get pressure put on the government to release their friends that were in prison from the previous encounter.
Okay. So, as we can tell, once again, the root cause of all this was some victimless crime from years previous, right? I mean, really, if that hadn't occurred, and these people that were in prison for victimless crimes that they didn't believe should be in prison, if they were never thrown in those cages in the first place, you probably wouldn't have enough people to have a reaction this strong, right? It's kind of like if the American government hadn't been over in Iraq and if the Russian government hadn't been fighting with Afghanistan, you might not have as many people who are outright extremists fighting for Al-Qaeda as you do because of the blowback. Anyway, so one of the things that always comes back to me though is most of these people, they might have had the wrong strategy, but really most of them were just trying to break away from a forced hierarchy system that was beating them down. I see, when I take a step back and look at this, I see them doing some bad things to try to get away from the tyranny, but I do see them trying to fight a form of tyranny. Not that they were capitalists on top of being anti-authoritarian per se. So I'm not saying they were praxeologists down to a T, but I think they had a lot of them seemed pretty educated. When you talk to most of the people who were in the video, they looked like they could read a science book. I mean, they didn't sound too crazy either. It's not like they were like, and bow down to Jehovah's Witness, etc. No offense to anybody from Jehovah's Witness, but I'm getting at, they didn't sound like extremist crazies to that on that extremist point. It was just, hey, leave us alone. Oh, you're not going to leave us alone. We're tired of you throwing us in cages. We're tired of everybody just going along with this. The problem was, I do agree with you. Threatening your neighbors is obviously against the non-aggression principle, especially when they're not responsible. They're not kidnapping their community neighbors. They might be supporting the state that does it, but it's indirect and they don't really know about it. So it comes back to the whole conundrum, the silver continuum lining section. But my whole thing with it is, I do see them as the state is obviously is usually the aggressors here. That's my perspective on it. That if it wasn't for the original state aggression, all these other problems wouldn't have stemmed from it. Go ahead, Chuck.
I think there's also something else that we haven't been looking at, and one of the questions proposed in this situation would be likely, well, if what these people did doesn't go against an ANCAP society, then it must be a bad society, right? But what they don't realize is there are sanctions, even in an ANCAP society, that if it had been a true free society, the rest of the society could have ostracized these people or just made their life too expensive to even exist. And, and I think that because of the state's involvement, that there wasn't a chance for the society to react that way, because instead of the people saying, well, if you're going to keep acting like that to us, we'll take it upon themselves. The government just came in guns blazing, pretty much, and there was no time for the private sector to react to these people. So I think that we didn't really get to see the whole side of a free society there. I think you could almost wonder if the whole thing, conspiracy me talking, but you almost could wonder if the whole thing was staged. Like, look at these weird people. They don't like government, and look how weird they are. Sometimes it's just something you might want to think about, but I do think that there was not enough of a chance for the private neighbors to react before the government came in guns blazing.
Well, we're talking about free market here. Once again, you wouldn't even have this scenario. You wouldn't have these people so upset at the state and confronting the police and bitching outside of the police station in the first place if it wasn't for all the victimless crimes that had arrested all the people previous that they were just trying to free. That's where it really stemmed from. Is once again, this all of it ties back. Everybody's like, you think that the state's responsible for X, Y, and Z, Michael. You know, it's only responsible for X and Y. And I'm like, actually, Z has a part here too. And that's what I've been trying to say to everybody. It's like, maybe the state plays more of a role than everybody's willing to admit. And in this part, it goes really to the very depth of this problem, is the state and the victimless crimes that created this whole chain of events. It's kind of like the Iranian hostage crisis. It didn't just start in 1979. That started back in even pre-1953, right? So when obviously, for those who don't know, when the Shah was propped up, Mossadegh was kicked out, and there was a CIA coup, which is now declassified information. Really sad scenario, but it's just chain of events that most people look at. The last thing, it's kind of like a referee in a basketball game. Somebody will foul somebody else really hard, and he'll know it was intentional, and he'll kind of like push the guy back, just kind of returning the joust, I guess you could say. And of course, by the time the referee turns around, he only sees the second guy pushing back. Anyway, guys, I got a train coming by here. Robert, you want to introduce Yurnaz?
Yeah, well, first let's do a quick test, Yurnaz. Let's see if your mic's working. Well, apparently not.
Yeah, just got to change the settings section.
Yeah, well, we're not sure what the deal is, but, why don't you keep trying all the different changes that you can see to do in the toolbar across the top, and of course on your other systems on your device. And as soon as you say something that we'll hear you, so just keep trying to say stuff, and then we'll say, okay, there you are. So just definitely keep on chiming in there. In the meantime, I guess we'll just we'll continue on the topics that we're dealing with, and since Mike's having some problems with the train going by, let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. Although I did want to address Chuck's claim that it might have been a group that was kind of like a false flag type of thing. I don't think so. I think that really what happened is that you're starting to see a response to some of the laws that occurred that were preventing people from being able to interact in a way with their society that they would like to. Minimum wage laws that are preventing people from getting jobs. Child labor laws that are preventing kids from getting a job as a sweeper in a store. All these different interferences that are preventing people from living their lives in a productive and peaceful way. That they're like, well, we don't want to be a part of this culture, we don't want to be a part of this society, and so we're going to make our own, and we're going to go back to our roots. And at that point, that's when they started their movement. And I think that's more realistic than this idea of making up a fake group to pick on and show that that they're just crazies. It doesn't make sense, especially since the government looks so bad in response to it. I mean, their response just really illustrates how poor, if that was a false flag, it's a really, really badly done false flag.
Well, there's been awfully done false flags before, so...
Yeah.
But I see your point.
Yeah. All right, now, obviously we've got... obviously we have another issue with... this type of thing reoccurring with like Kent State, with Waco, with the guy in California, burning down the cabin that he was in. The response of dealing with people who are either a danger to themselves or a danger to the society is to increase the level of aggression, the hostilities, and make them more and more and more violent, instead of actually trying to calm down the situation by, setting up a perimeter, by saying, well, we're going to starve you out. So, if you happen to have a lot of food and water in there, okay, that's fine. We'll wait. We'll just wait a really long time. Okay, that's fine. It may be expensive, but we're also not just outright killing people because they're disagreement with us is something that we haven't been able to address and understand yet. So I don't know. I think that it's really poorly handled across the board. Anyway, moving on to the next topic. There was a student who was arrested for writing a fictional story about shooting a dinosaur with a gun. Of course, this is a result of the really wrong-headed rules that you see in schools, in public schools, or actually indoctrination centers, I should call them. There's a no, what is it, when you don't allow any level of breaking of the rule, and it's all treated the same. I forget what the
tolerance. No tolerance.
Yeah, zero tolerance policies. Yeah, the zero tolerance policies are horrible across the board. There was another kid that was expelled, or at least suspended, for possession of drugs while he was turning in drugs that he found. He found some drugs, went to turn them in, and then got expelled or suspended because of it. Now, in this particular case, I don't know. I killed my neighbor's pet dinosaur, and then in the next status I said I bought the gun to take care of the business. I don't know. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Pop-Tart gun thing was absolutely ridiculous as well. As discussed in that. I mean, how is it possible that we have zero tolerance policies? Well, what happens is that if you have a monopoly that people are forced to pay into, to have, your customers are forced to participate, you start to get bad employees and bad directors of the business, and people have no incentive to become better in providing whatever the service happens to be. In this case, the service was education services. Now, what will happen is you'll get dumber and dumber teachers, worse and worse administrators, that will continue to take advantage of the fact that nobody can fire them because they can't go to any competitor.
Hey everybody, Ken here, aka Liberty.
All right, I think I heard something. You're Nuz?
Nope.
Nope.
Oh, can we not hear your Nuz?
Nope.
No.
Okay, I heard something, but just keep on trying. So anyway, with the teachers continuously becoming less and less attentive to what their job is and not having to compete, you'll get people who are really dumb, and they will make bad decisions regarding dangerous circumstances, and they won't handle an actually dangerous situation very well. So in order to prevent a problem that could really be a dangerous situation, they create these rules that have zero tolerance in order to cover their asses with stupid teachers, instead of actually getting competition to have better quality teachers and having better responses to these things, and actually coming up with plans, which you will see if you have a competitive market. If you're in a competitive market and you don't address these concerns, then your competitor does. Guess who's going to get the business? The guy who does the job right. So it's a result of the monopoly system that we have going on there, and also the forced participation. Any comments?
Yeah, sorry, I dropped out there. I love my internet connection right now. I was a part of that big charter problem that they just had for the last week, and I don't know how many of you guys heard about that big outage. A lot of people.
I mean, like that? Alright, well, that's an issue. So, I guess I'll comment while we're waiting for him to try to get back in. If I may, Robert.
Absolutely, go for it.
Well, this also brings up another... You were talking about how other stupid problems where people have been suspended. Do you remember the kid who got suspended? Someone brought a gun to school, an actual gun to school, on the bus. And the kid fought with the person on the bus and got the gun away from him. And instead of the kid who originally brought the gun in, the hero kid got suspended from school for bringing a gun in. Even though he fought it off the kid and there were multiple witnesses to tell the district, no, he just saved their lives. And he got suspended anyways. Well, yeah. I mean, isn't that bizarre? And it's just like, you sit there and you wonder if that kid hadn't done anything. Let's say that other kid who had brought the gun in had the intention of killing everyone, right? So you basically just punished a hero for what reason? And it just makes you think that if they're willing to do that for a hero, then it's almost like as if they want us to completely be okay with the fact that even talking about a gun now is too taboo. So, in a fictional story, no less. So, I think you're right about, people just getting dumber and dumber and dumber, especially when it comes to the fact that there's a monopoly on education and there's no one else really that can fight it. And I think we need to try to push the concept of private education more and more on the society so they can understand that once more schools compete, more schools will drop these stupid rules and ridiculous regulations. And I mean, does the article mention who was the final decision maker on suspending this kid? Was it a teacher who?
Well, no, teachers don't suspend.
Right, but the teacher had to turn him in.
He was actually arrested and suspended. So let's see. Yeah, investigators, blah, blah, blah. So the police arrested him and charged him with disorderly conduct, and he was also suspended from school for the week. It doesn't say who suspended him.
Disorderly conduct,
Yeah.
Okay, right? Because that's turning in your homework assignment. How can that get any more disorderly, right?
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't a violent crime. You know what I'm saying? What violence did he actually impose on anybody? None.
No one. It was a fictional story. And on top of that, why is a society... This brings up a bigger question, is why as a society are we supposed to be, according to the state, so afraid of guns? Other than the fact that if we have guns, we can obviously keep them from having total power over us. I mean, why? Is there any other reason? Or...
Well, because people get uncomfortable with guns. They don't like them because they don't know how they work, and they always think that guns are used by bad guys, and unless they're cops, of course, or military people, then guns can be used by good guys. There was a video that I saw. I don't remember who made it, but basically this gun club. They invited 5 liberals who had never touched a gun to come on out, and they would teach them how to use a gun, and then they would actually put them in the firing range and give them a chance to fire these different weapons. And they fired shotguns and handguns and rifles, and the responses that you got were just it was crazy. They were really. Oh, I've got all this blood pumping. I feel so excited. I feel alive. Blah, blah, blah. Great, great, great. But I don't think I'm going to change my position on it. Or that they did change their. One of them actually did feel that they might have changed their mind. It's a lack of familiarity. It's the unknown, and they're scared of it. And because it is such a dangerous thing, obviously, they should be afraid of it in certain respects. But their lack of understanding is entirely the source.
So wouldn't the proper response to a lack of understanding would be to properly teach people about what a gun is and how to use it and what cases it's okay and not okay to use it,
Yes.
as opposed to just saying, guns are scary?
Well,
that was my impression of the state.
Well, if you're not familiar with the normal response from an American to something that they don't understand or something that they're scared of, they'll say, "Well, they should pass a law," and that's the standard response. And well, yeah, let's just go ahead and
look how many laws got us to where we are now, right?
Well, people think the law is civilized, that politics is civilized, and that everything else is chaos. That's the dichotomy that's been drawn in their head. So we can't expect them to think of anything else. It's always, if you don't follow the system, then you're going to have chaos, and we can't have chaos, so just follow the freaking system. The system's civilized. The system is civilized. Didn't you know? It's the thing that brings us civilization. It's they have it all backwards. That's the problem, really.
Yeah, it's definitely a response to an indoctrination that they've been given, that without this particular system you would not have order, and that's just crazy. The Mad Max movies and similar, the stupid freaking anarchy movie that came out recently in the sequel.
Which just shall not be named.
Yeah, it's just absolute stupidity that people don't really, they're not willing to explore something that they don't understand, and they just are spoon-fed through school, through politics, through the news media that is actually just an arm of the government. They're taught this is something you cannot possibly accept. You have to have government telling people how to live their lives, because obviously in your life you would be running around killing people if there weren't these rules against it, right? Oh wait, they don't actually get that far.
Damn, Robert, I'm scared of you. I'm afraid you'd kill me without government.
Yeah.
It's just what's weird to me is that they can actually arrest somebody for writing a word in a school, assignment. Arrest? Well, I don't understand the arrest part. How did they get arrest out of writing something? It just doesn't make any sense. I guess this is what we expect from a big daddy state, right?
Well, remember, they called it disorderly conduct. So apparently the word gun was too disorderly for them. So they arrested him.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is I can't, it's really sad. I'm just trying to pinpoint the idea that arresting somebody over writing a word that was fictitious from the beginning and obviously meant to be a joke, it makes me like, wow, North Korea is right around the corner type feeling, Mm-hmm. I mean, it really it's just like, my goodness.
In my middle school, there was a kid, and he was like a special needs kid, and so people used to pick on him, and he got really mad one day, and in a bathroom stall, he wrote, "I'm going to boom the school."
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes, I hear you. Holy feedback, though. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so I came through on the mobile still, for some reason.
All right, now we got you in there.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and let Chuck finish his thought, and then we'll go ahead and start talking with you.
Okay, sure.
He spelled bomb wrong, the school, but B-O-O-M-B, but they still arrested him. Mind you, this was a 7th grade kid, and he was special needs, and he had no clue what he was doing, but they still arrested him for, saying, "I'm going to boom the school." And, it was like, at the time, I was laughing about it because I was a status kid, and I was like, haha, right, he's going to blow up the school, right? Good job, cops. And now I'm looking back at it, I'm like, there's absolutely no way this guy could have bombed the school. So what they basically just did was they ruined his life for no reason. And that's kind of the idea of they're basically ruining this kid's life because he wrote the word gun in a homework assignment. And it's just sad.
I don't think they're going to ruin his life at all. He's definitely going to come out of it with a lawsuit about his First Amendment rights, and probably come out with a pretty nice chunk of change.
I hope so.
But it's all going to be at the expense of the taxpayers, of course.
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, it's like, sometimes it's, I don't know. Like, I'm glad that he wins, and I'm glad that his First Amendment right comes through, but at the same time, it's like, why did we have to go this far? If they had understood that he was using it as a joke, which they had to understand that, they wouldn't have had to pay this kid if he wins.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Let's go ahead and move on to a discussion with Yurnaz. I know that Mike's kind of trying to keep it on a down low because he's got some internet connection problems, and sometimes he gets static, and he's turned off his camera so that he can make sure that his connection doesn't drop. But so I'm going to go ahead and ask you some questions and see if we can answer some questions for you and so on.
You guys hear me?
Go ahead.
So
yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
First, let me go ahead and just do a quick introduction of our guest here. Yurnaz Ramatarsingh? I don't know.
Ramatarsingh.
Ramatarsingh is a political science student at the University of Amsterdam. He's an adherent of the objectivist philosophy created by Ayn Rand. He supports laissez-faire capitalism and a minarchist government. He also writes political commentaries for various Dutch websites and has defended objectivism on Dutch national television.
Yes, I did.
Welcome to the Voluntary Virtues Network and the Voluntary Virtues Roundtable. My name is Robert Kruger, and the host is Mike Shanklin, and he will certainly chime in from time to time. You can't hold him back. I guess the first question that I'd like to ask you is, what is it that drew you to the objectivist position? What are the things about it that make you think, yes, this is the way things should work?
Well, I actually used to be very left-wing in my earlier years. So when I was 19, my brother, who turned objectivist a year before me, gave me a copy of Atlas Shrugged. And after reading it, I recognized so much of myself in the book. So I kind of understood why I was the way I was. So it's more like Ayn Rand told me why I was selfish. And I didn't know before. I knew I was selfish, but I didn't have the words or the principles to describe it, to fully defend myself. So I think it's the rationality. I love how she hammers on objectivity, things being what they are. I always used to be a very strong atheist, so I recognized a lot of that too in her work. And I like her ideal man, her whole sense of life, the way she looks at life to be lived, not to be, carried on like some burden, like some religions tell you. So I love the atheist part, I love the rational part, and I especially love the principle part.
Okay.
Let me ask you a quick question. You say back in the day you knew you were selfish.
Yeah.
Back in the day, did you actually feel bad that you were selfish, or did you feel neutral about it?
Not fully, because I can give a small example. It's really stupid. When my mom asked me to put the water on for tea, for instance, and if I knew that I wasn't going to drink the tea, I already felt that something wasn't right. Now, some people might call that just being rude, but something in me already told me that if I don't benefit from something, I shouldn't be the one doing it. So you can call that selfish. So I knew it. I felt it was right. I knew it was something from within me, but I didn't have the philosophy to back it up and to fully understand it to improve.
Okay, along those lines, while we're on this mindset, real quick, and first of all, I'm really glad to meet you.
Yeah, I'm very glad it worked out. It was so frustrating.
Hey man, it's good stuff. We're gonna have a great discussion. I've never met anybody I agree with 100%, right? But I'm sure we do have a lot of agreement, and where we don't, we can at least discuss it civilly. One of the things I'm curious about is you talk about selfishness and benevolence, etc. Well, we're on this mindset. Can you explain that to some people who might just say it sounds completely rude? And then I can go into a scenario. So let's give the scenario first of all. Let's say that there's a child that you do not know. It doesn't matter. I guess he's thousands of miles in a different country away from. Will never have anything to do with you. And you're on your deathbed, and you have like $5,000 to spare to give to somebody. Would you give it to the kid so he can get his medicine to get rid of the cancer or whatever the bad thing is?
But I'm dying, right? So I'm not going to enjoy the money.
Let's say you're not. Let's say you're not dying and you have extra money.
Wow, this is so abstract. Like, if he would come up to me with some good arguments, I would definitely consider it, given that I'm probably pretty old and I'm living large, I guess. So if you're asking about charity, I believe in charity in the sense of people giving for the values they hold. So if some guy comes up to me and he's principled and he wants to make something of his life, I would definitely consider it. But I think it's kind of a broad question to ask, honestly. Because...
All right, let me modify the question. Would you give the money to me instead?
Well, I don't know you, so I don't know you, but maybe at the end of the show. Maybe at the end of the show. And Ayn Rand responded to these kinds of questions, and she said, men do not live on lifeboats. So, it's very difficult to judge a philosophy on the basis of an extreme example.
On a basic level, can you explain objectivism to me as if, let's pretend I have no clue what it is, all right? Could you get very basic?
Okay, if I would go if I would get very basic, I would say there are 5 branches. The first one is metaphysics, and it basically tells you that things are what they are. I would say then we go on to epistemology, and that tells you that reason is your only guide to survival, your most important tool. You know how to acquire knowledge, how to use rationality. Then we would move on to ethics, and I would tell you that it's in your own interest to be a rational egoist, to get the most out of your life, to only do things to improve your life. Don't sacrifice yourself to others. Don't expect others to sacrifice on your behalf. And the 4th branch would be politics. And if you take the first 3 branches, you would get to capitalism, based on individual rights and minimal government, which we'll get into, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And the 5th branch is aesthetics and art. So I don't know if you want to get into that. It's not my field of expertise. So that would be really quick, like 1 minute objectivism.
I think that was very sufficient. Good job. I was just curious
you.
on how. But yeah, no, that was pretty sufficient, and I'm satisfied with that answer. I was just curious because I've heard of it, but I've never had it explained to me at a basic level. So
Laura never explained it. Oh God.
He wasn't on the show with us at that time.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and drill into some of the things that you see with objectivism.
Yes.
You're familiar with the A equals A concept, right?
Definitely.
Okay, so if you have A equals A, that would indicate that a person is equal to another person insofar as when it comes to the rights of self-ownership, the rights to own the fruits of their labor, things of that nature, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree.
All right, and so if you have 2 people who are of equivalent power or right to control their own lives and not to control each other's lives, how can you justify creating an authority group, a group that has authority, over another group without their consent?
Well, I wouldn't.
That's what government is.
I don't think if you read Ayn Rand, you would get this conclusion. Because Ayn Rand was very specific about how she described government, and she made it very clear. Nobody can ever be forced to pay for something they don't agree with. So there's no taxation. So in that sense, I don't think government is aggression per se. I get the point about government being forced, and I agree with you guys on like 99% of the cases, government is forced. But
Right.
when government is funded voluntarily, like Ayn Rand stated in The Virtue of Selfishness, very explicitly, maybe we shouldn't call it government, that's like a semantic discussion, but her version of government is not one that forces people to pay for certain services.
Okay.
I have a question.
Another question on this same line. If you have a daughter, let's say, for example, and she says, so I'm going to get married, and he says, yeah, that's great. I love the idea of you getting married, and this is the guy that you can choose from when it comes to marriage. But I want to choose that guy. No, this is the only guy that's available for marriage. Does that person now have a choice?
That would definitely be wrong, because she would be forced, right?
Right. So in the case of a government, which is a monopoly, where there's only one choice, then you now have, no options, and you are forced to buy their services.
No. Listen, Ayn Rand said explicitly, you're never forced to pay. So.
Right, but if you only have one choice, and you need the service that's being provided, arbitration, for example, or protection, if you only are given one option to choose from, that's coercive. You're not allowed to choose any other option that is coercion, just like it was in the marriage situation.
Well, you're talking about the monopoly, but Ayn Rand also said explicitly that the government should have a monopoly on retaliatory force, not the initiation of force. So that would mean that the only power, quote unquote, the government would have over you is that the moment you initiate force on somebody else, they would stop you. Well, I don't believe anyone has a right to be violent. So,
Right.
So you can't claim a right after you initiated force. You can't say, I rob you and the government has no right to stop me. So,
Obviously.
Yeah, so given her explanation of retaliatory force, I would say your biggest problem would be that there would be a government, they would not tax you, and the only time you would meet them would be when you initiated force. Is that really force?
No, it's defensive force, and I get that. But the thing
Okay.
is, I've got this company that I put together. I've got my CEO. I'm going to hire Mike Shanklin as a CEO. I'm going to hire Lauren Rumpler as our marketing director, and I'm going to hire Chuck as the police chief. And
Right, when do I start?
And we're going to hire all these guys to do the same exact thing. We're going to provide the service of defensive force, of enforcement of contracts, to have reactionary force, self-defensive force. And what happens when the government says to us, no, you can't do that?
Well, this is where I would
violence.
Yeah, this is where I would draw the line. I don't think Ayn Rand's vision would be against private cops per se, but the moment you start arresting people, the moment you start punishing people, giving them sanctions, that's when I would draw the line. So you can hire a private eye.
Yeah, you're going onto a different topip. Okay, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is if I would like to offer the same services that government does.
Okay, so you.
Then government does what? What does government do? It prohibits me from being able to compete with them. And that is the initiation of violence against me trying to start my own business to provide a service.
I would say that at that moment, the moment you want to compete with the government, let's say in catching and trialing criminals, for instance, you think this is a good money business for you, you got the guys ready, you just want to catch some criminals and trial them. Well, I would say then you should start thinking about secession, for instance. If that is to say, if you get so much support from the area where you're from, like all these people want you to run their police, right? Like they love your product so much more than they love the government product. Well, if that would be true, and it's not impossible, then I would say you would have the initiative to start like a new state or to secede from the political union you're a part of, because then they wouldn't have any backing. Like, think of the situation where your police officers would be in higher regard by all the citizens, for instance. That would mean this is a failed state. That would mean that the government probably really sucks, that they're really bad, that they're corrupt cops. So it would be a signal of how bad the government is. And I'm not against replacing governments. I'm not against countries saying we don't accept this brutal government that is oppressing us. So I would see it more as a rebellion against a failed government than I would say a business idea. Do you get what
you require secession in order for it to go through.
It could go two ways. Like it could go the secession way, or it could go nobody wants to fund the government voluntarily anymore because they suck. Otherwise, they wouldn't want your cops. So it could go two ways. I'm not sure about it.
So the question that I have for you then is, doesn't it actually create a vacuum in the time that it takes to go from one to the other, instead of actually being able to say, all right, well, on my particular plot of land in my property, the people who administer contracts, the people who are in charge of making sure that property is respected and so on, those people, I'd like to switch over to these people, and I can do it just by changing the people that I send my check to. Okay? Instantaneously, I now have service that's automatic, that is now covered, instead of having to go through a period of time where, there's crappy service, I'm getting crappy service, and I'm getting crappy service, and I have to go through, I don't know, the process of going and declaring that they are invalid, or persuading other people to not fund them, and eventually letting them die off after they blow through their financial reserves and so on. I mean, the potential loss that's going to occur for all that time is completely unnecessary.
Well,
if you accept the fact that the government is initiating violence against my business for me trying to compete, if they try to stop me, okay?
No, listen, I'm looking at it differently. I'm saying the moment you are in the position to compete with government in terms of finances, of quality of employees on this specific field, we're talking about a failed state. Like, it cannot happen in a vacuum. You can't have a good state with good cops abiding the rules, protecting people, and then you come up and you have like a better product. It's such an impossible situation. If we ever get to the point you're talking about, we're talking about civil war probably.
Hey,
You know?
what about in the situation where the majority of the country wants to use your services? Should the government turn over hands to you voluntarily? Should they just hand over the power to you voluntarily?
Well, ideally, like we discussed, all funds of the government would have been voluntarily donated. So if the majority of the country thinks you are a better police chief or you could run the police department so much better, they would probably say to the government, hey, hire Lauren or else your money's going to dry up because she's obviously better. So like that's why I call these situations so quite impossible. So I'm not saying there never will be a power vacuum. Of course there might be, but you would have the advantage of objective law at least against having anarchy. So I can get that this might occur, but it seems very unlikely because also like Ayn Rand said, if we ever get to this point of let's say laissez-faire minarchism, that would mean that the culture would be so dominantly rational, so much focus on individual rights. It would be quite impossible to have, let's say, the same failing cops like we have now, but all of the culture would be way more rational. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Now, question. You stated that they should be enforcing objective law. Now, here's the thing. Ayn Rand actually stated in, I'm trying to remember which novel it was, but she stated that objective law exists because man exists. So objective law is born with man, and so therefore isn't it more of an issue of just us recognizing objective law? It's not that it needs to be created, it's that it already exists, and we're just not recognizing it.
Yeah, okay, but if you're talking about like the field of law, I mean, it's real technical. So yes, I agree with you that like general things like people shouldn't touch each other, people shouldn't rob from each other. Yes, you can derive those, let's say, from apparent reality. But if you're talking about contract law and all the nuts and bolts of technicalities between laws, I think you gotta go in deep. Like you gotta construct that. You can't just do that off of looking at the world and deriving objective law. Yes, you could for like general purposes, but if you have to get down to what do we do if I have a debt and I can't pay? Do I need to be a slave? Do I need to go to jail? Do I need to, like, all those things, you can derive that just from objective reality. But you have to go in deep for those kinds of things.
Don't you think that it's possible for the free market to create a sort of technocracy where people wouldn't necessarily need the government because they have things like, in the situation you're suggesting, where they have a debt and they've created a contract and now this person suddenly can't pay. Instead of having those situations arise at all, people could use an escrow service in which the person has to pay the money before, and so it's put into an escrow, and when both people sign it, the money goes to them, so that everybody knows that the money's already there.
I support every development that makes the government less important. Like, I support these things because it would mean less money for government, it would mean less waste, like, totally fine, but there are still killers and rapists out there. So I'm not doubting that like technology and the internet could change a whole lot of things, and like mediation could solve a whole lot of issues without getting a judge involved. I'm for all of that. Like Ayn Rand had the idea of having financial transactions being taxed with a certain percentage, but you could choose for it to be taxed. So if you choose for it to be taxed, you pay more, and you get the guarantee that you can go to a judge if the other party fails. If you don't choose to have the tax, you pay less, but you run a risk. That's one specific idea Ayn Rand had. And that would be a great idea because no one would have to pay for someone else's lawsuits, and people who know each other and trust each other would not have to pay taxes while dealing with each other. So that's a great solution.
Are you familiar with tort court?
I don't know exactly what the Dutch or European equivalent of it is, so if you could like tell me in a few sentences, I could get it.
Robert, you probably know how to explain this a lot better than I would.
Okay, well let's bring up a couple of things that I'm sure that you're familiar with. You've heard the term merchant law. Have you ever heard that term?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and common law. Have you heard that term?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, merchant law and common law were both derived from basically markets of law, where people would go to a variety of different arbiters who would arbitration would be done with a choice. You would choose which particular judge you wanted to have your argument heard, and it was made out of an agreement between the two people as to which one would provide the arbitration. Now, in the case of merchant law, you would see that standards became a norm. That if, for example, if you found a shipwreck, that the person who found the shipwreck would get half of the booty that was found there, and the original merchant who was transporting the shipment would get half of it back. This became a standard after finding that it was the one that produced the best results. If you had people just taking it 100%, they would get it. It just didn't work out very well. With the risks versus rewards for transporting goods. Also in language, the idea that that there is some sort of monopoly on who dictates what particular words and how they are used and what is appropriate, obviously was not necessary with language. We actually grew language through just people using words in a specific way and it becoming a norm. And what happens is, when you have a variety of different participants who are all throwing out ideas on how to resolve these particular concerns, whether it's how to communicate or how to arbitrate, you have a lot of different people putting out ideas. And these ideas eventually percolate to the ones that are the better ideas, the ones that are successfully providing appropriate communication or an appropriate arbitration, start to win out. If you have a monopoly, a single company or a single institution providing law, then you have the opportunity for them to miss the mark when it comes to law. Whereas if you have a lot of people, taking the darts and throwing it at the dartboard, whichever one is hitting the bullseye the best is the one that you gravitate towards. And so in order to find objective law by creating a system that you have one particular group who is fallible in charge of it, you have the opportunity to have the entire society experience fallible, flawed, failed policies. Whereas if you have a competitive market, you find that the one that provides the best solution is picked.
Okay, but listen, I can get real far with your theory, but the moment you start talking about rape and murder, then it doesn't seem to work. Like, I can get how two merchants in a society can get to certain standards, like I totally believe that, but if you're like a rape suspect and a rape victim, you expect them to like agree on the judge or agree on the punishment the rapist will get if he is convicted. I think when violence is involved, you absolutely need government. When it's about financial contracts, I think the market could do it itself. But I think the government would just be like a backup system. But I definitely think the market could have very innovative ideas about not going to the judge and arranging it amongst themselves.
Well, the thing that happened with when it came to common law, which actually dealt with the idea that somebody was violated, for example, with rape, you had several different policies tried within these different competing ideas as to how to deal with a rapist. And one of the policies was, well, you kill them. And the result was to see that the number of instances where there was a rape and then a subsequent murder of the victim increased. Because...
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
You want to reduce the number of witnesses to your crime. Yeah. So they found that was not as effective. Now, this could have gone on for a very, very long time if there was a monopoly on this particular ruling on how to deal with rape. However, because there were different systems that were being used in different areas, they found that, hey, this one works better. Instinctually, you kind of do want to just go ahead and lop the guy's head off if he's going to be a rapist. You just kind of like that idea. But empirically, you can see that the result is actually not as good of a result as actually having some other option for punishment. So all I'm saying to you is that even though you're dealing with these heinous crimes where there is a violation that is, so hard to deal with, the number one thing that you want to do is you want to have competition between how to deal with it so that you find the best solution. If you don't do empirical testing of a science project to see which particular pattern or methodology that you are going to use to try to achieve a result, you can't determine which one of those systems works best. And the same thing is true in law. If you don't have competition to provide you with a test to show, hey, yes, this works, this does not work, then you don't see which system works the best. And if new innovations come along, if you have a monopoly on a society, new innovations come along, well, you don't have any real need or incentive pushing you.
No. Hold on, you're wrong. You're wrong about the last point, because you're right when it comes to current government. But when the money is voluntarily donated, there is definitely an incentive for the people who work at the government to do their job well, because they know the money is going to dry up. So I'm not saying that makes it perfect, but there's definitely an incentive. There's no, like, oh, the hell with this shit. Like they got reasons to work for their job. So I get your point about law being diverse and like having multiple, let's say, trial and errors can achieve better results in time. And objective law doesn't mean the same law in every country. That is to say, you could say in this country, if you rape someone, we kill you. And you could say in the other country, we put you in jail for 10 years. Like both of those could be called objective law, depending on like the reasoning behind it, right? Like, and the focus has to be protecting individual rights. Like that's got to be the core of every punishment. But they could, like, countries could differ in terms of punishment and how they punish, but they can differ in what rights they are protecting. You get what I'm saying? So
what is objective about having a set of rules that applies to a geographic location instead of applying those rules to a group of people who have all consented and agreed to the particular set of rules? Okay, now imagine that instead of having borders being a fixed point on a map, borders are actually, all right, well, they're memberships. I'm a member of the United States of America rules arbitration system, and I'm a member of the French arbitration system, and I'm a member of the Swiss arbitration system, and we've all got all these things, and it doesn't matter where we're located, it's that we have adopted those particular rule sets. And you can actually immigrate freely between these different countries as far as rules go. If you can freely change between these different countries just by calling them a country instead of a business, there's really no difference. If you're willing to accept that there's got to be more, there can be more than one rule system, like different countries, well, that means that you allow for competition. And there's no reason for you to have an imaginary line on a map dictate what those rules are.
Well,
I want to add something real quick. You guys have been talking for a while.
Oh yeah, sure.
I keep hearing things called voluntary taxation, but when I
donation.
Oh, okay, a voluntary donation. That's different.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I just wanted to clarify that in the dictionary, taxation is known as a compulsory contribution to state revenue.
I understand.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's interesting because Ayn Rand called it voluntary taxation.
Oh yeah. You know what? She did use that word, and she actually, and I think she even explained it because she does that a few times. She says like laissez-faire capitalism, and she says objective reality. So I think sometimes she just used like a double word to like enforce it, but in the case of taxation, she kind of missed it. But like she meant donations. Like it's obvious she didn't mean taxation, but like I think that's like a misnomer.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah. She did say that though, but she meant donations. Otherwise, she would have put voluntary in front of it. Yeah.
So I'm glad that's cleared up.
What?
Okay,
What if
so
I? Oh, sorry.
before Chuck, I was actually going to ask you for your input on that.
I actually just. I have a question for you, Nez, and that's
Yeah.
what if? Because in order for a governing body to be around, it obviously needs money.
Mhm.
So if I don't pay, does that mean I am technically what's the word I'm looking for? Above any of these rules? Like,
No.
let's say I am a rapist and a murderer.
Mhm.
For God, I hate using that term, but let's pretend I am in
Yeah.
this situation. And I'm not paying my donations because I want to keep my own money.
Yeah.
Am I above the scrutiny of this governing body? Which, some more to me, it sounds like you're describing a business. So, am I above the law of this governing business?
No. As long as you don't initiate force, you won't even notice they exist. But if you're a rapist and a murderer, you're probably gonna encounter them at some point. So you're not above the law. Like, you don't pay, so you might not have voting rights. Maybe they don't evacuate your house when there's a disaster. Like, I'm not gonna go into all the specifics. It really depends on the country and like the circumstances. So you might be missing out on a few, what some people would call perks, but nobody can initiate force against you. Nobody can take your property. Like, people could choose not to trade with you. You understand, but nobody can steal your shit. Nobody can kill you. As long as you don't initiate force, you have nothing to do with government. Like, that's how I would see it. And like, I would 100% want criticism to anarchism, because you've been asking me some questions. Like, what I find the difficulty about anarchism is I feel that you guys got to make a choice. Either you're for liberty or you're for individual rights. And I don't think you can combine the two. Because the moment you use individual rights, like Ayn Rand did, you would have to acknowledge some form of objective law. So I would say either you guys say, no, we're not about individual rights, we're all about freedom. Like that might be a valid position to hold. But I think it's confusing to combine the individual rights with the full freedom. I don't think you can combine the two.
Okay, the question is kind of begging the question, in that if your assumption is that objective law is something that can be administered by a monopoly, which it can't. Objective law cannot objectively be done by a monopoly. A monopoly has within it a violation of the objective law concept. The people who are the ruling class, the government, they have the right and the ability to do something which no one else can do. They are given permission to initiate violence against.
No. Initiate.
Yes,
why do you say
let me
initiate?
explain.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. Yeah. I get
Right.
it.
If you try to offer the services that they provide, they can say, no, you can't. And that is the initiation of violence against their competition.
But I'm saying, when you get to that point, we're talking about civil war.
You're mixing up the concept, okay? Don't worry about going into civil war and all that other crap. If we have a perfectly functional government and it's working just fine, okay, but I come out with a new innovation that nobody has ever tried before, and I would like to offer it to people as a service, and I have a better, I've made a better mousetrap, and I go around and saying, all right, here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and start this new government thing. This government over here can say, no, you can't. You have to go through me, because I'm the one that's receiving the money that is voluntarily given, but I'm the only person that the voluntarily given money can be given to.
No, they don't, because you can go to all the donors and say, look at my amazing plan. And if they believe you, they would retract their money and give it to you. So the government can't force them not to give you the money, and the government can't force them to pay them.
You know what that's called, though?
No? What?
It's called a business, because you can take your money and give it to somebody else and buy their services.
Okay, so is this a semantic discussion? Like, do you agree with me? Like, that would be great. But is this a semantic discussion, or would you like this situation to occur?
I've actually stated several times, like in different interviews and on my own show, that this is literally a semantic argument between objectivists and anarchists, and I've been trying to explain that to some of the closed Ayn Rand or Ayn Rand Institute objectivists, and they just kind of dismiss me. But yeah, I've been trying to explain in the right words that we're actually having a semantic argument.
So I would say the only thing you cannot do is say, I want to form a new government and start attacking the government, like, because it would be initiation of force. But you can say but you can say, I want to start a new government and run this country. Please give me your money. Of course you can say that. Freedom of speech.
See?
People have the freedom to give you their money.
See?
That's business. That's a business. It's not a government.
Okay, but did you think?
Okay, we can argue that all day long.
No. Hold on. Did you think I was going to say that the government can stop people from paying you if they want to recognize you as their government? Like, of course not. How can they?
That's what anarchism is.
Okay, but I'm saying it's such a highly unlikely situation in my view. In my view. It's quite
a very unlikely thing if you've got a society that has found that we're using State Farm, and we're using Allstate, and we're using some other company, I don't know, Geico. Okay, all these three companies have been competing around, and they've been finding that all right, we create arbitration services, and they essentially have three quote unquote governments that are providing for all these services, and everybody's content with them. And if somebody else comes along, they could better be doing something really special, because these guys have got their shit down. They know what they're doing, and so we're just moving along with the idea that, all right, well, we've got this system and it's working just fine. Certainly, though, if an innovation does come along, though, that company will come along and say, here's the new idea, here's the new situation, and then they will take those customers that are interested in providing their voluntary taxes or payment for goods and services, and then compete and take over the marketplace. And you would probably see that the market share would tend to be fairly concentrated in a few groups.
And just like the fact that people are going to be so advanced knowledge-wise and philosophically, it's just like, your belief that in a minarchist society you're going to have more rational people.
Yeah.
That would actually skirt the issue of civil war. That it would greatly reduce the issue for civil war. So I'm just kind of using your point to reinforce anarchy, which I think we're wrong here.
Yeah. So I just want to take like 1 second here and say, "Ha, Internet! I told you." So, see, this is the thing, is that I knew if we had Uranez on and we talked about this, he would come to the same conclusion that I have, and the same conclusion that people that talk to you guys are coming to, and it is that we are literally having a semantic argument between objectivists and anarchists. And I wish people understood this and would watch things like this, because I have been arguing this point repeatedly. I argued it on Jeff Berwick's show. I did a speech at Parkfest.
Lauren, don't cheer too soon. Listen. No, like I've had this discussion many times with like Dutch libertarians, Dutch anarcho-capitalists, and sometimes we get real close. But I still feel there are a few things not connecting the anarchists and the objectivists, and it is that many anarchos I know have trouble with the fact that you cannot have competition of law, like you would call it. And I would use other words. Like, I would never frame it in those words. I would not, like, you can't have a street and like one guy say, if you steal from me, I cut off your hand, and another guy say,
in one-world government? So you believe it, because that's what you're saying would only be consistent in a one-world government. If you have England and the U.S., like you were saying earlier, which was allowable, then they would be in conflict and in competition just like that.
I don't think I think we're talking. No, I don't think I was saying that. But okay, maybe I did express myself that greatly. That's possible.
But you already indicated that you accept that there are multiple different governments that would be available in a society. That you would have, perhaps France, Spain,
for instance, yeah.
Alsace-Lorraine. So let's say that you're in Alsace-Lorraine and you happen to be a German citizen and you assault a French citizen. Okay.
Yeah.
The laws that are going to be involved here are actually going to be conflicting laws between the people in France, the people in Germany, and the people in Alsace-Lorraine. Okay. Now the rules that will govern that will be based upon agreements that occur between the French, the German, and the Alsace-Lorraine people. Okay. They come up with standards of how to deal with situations like this. And the same thing is true when you have a system like a free market, where, let's say, for example, if somebody were to be using Verizon Wireless as their cell phone service, and they go traveling to somewhere that AT&T covers but Verizon doesn't, they have a negotiation where you can use the communication system of AT&T even though you're a Verizon customer, and they make reciprocal agreements.
Yeah,
and this occurs between countries,
Mm-hmm.
and it occurs between businesses. And so the question is that can you imagine a country not requiring that you have a specific spot as far as like a border that designates that you're in this particular location, because sometimes if you're traveling, you're still covered by those rules elsewhere. I mean, you already know that German citizens have a different interaction if they're in France than a French citizen would. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's extradition laws. There's all sorts of different things that can occur. So there's no real reason why a line on a map should dictate that you have competing countries. They could actually be, like I said, you have the USA label on your lapel, and you've got the French label on your lapel, and each one of them has reciprocal agreements on how to deal with the fact that you're using a different government than I am, except that instead of calling it a government, it's an arbitration service. That's all the semantic difference is.
Well, okay, if you agree with how I describe what I call government, that would be great. It will be the first time, because with many anarchists that I've discussed this with, they can come close. They like the fact that that there's no taxation, but they still feel that the monopoly on the territory force is wrong. But this is the solution. The solution is, if they suck, people will not be willing to pay for it. And if they suck it, if they're oppressive, and people keep paying for them, we're talking about dictatorship. And dictatorships have no legitimacy at all. So they're just crooks.
But you yourself have said that that the government itself, the government, cannot prohibit another government from offering to be the government for the people.
Yeah, but this is, I think, where we're gonna divide, where we're gonna switch sides, because I said, if you want to form a better government than the government that is in place, and people support you, and they give you the money, and they tell those people, get lost, we want this guy to run the government, there's a difference than if you get 5 people in the country to pay for your government, and you just decide that every person that robs one of those 5 people is going to go into your private dungeon. Do you see the difference there? I totally leave open the option for you to get the donors and, be the better person in charge, but I don't allow you to put the 5 people who have bought your subscription, to put them in your dungeon.
But you would if they happen to have a border between your place and their place.
Well, this is an interesting discussion about secession. When can you secede? Is it 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people? I don't know where to draw the line. Honestly, I would say probably a couple of 100 people. I don't know definitely. But if you're talking about if you're talking about one, then you're talking about that the moment you get on his lawn or do something he doesn't like, he has a sign outside saying, "I'm the ultimate ruler on my lawn," or something. So come on.
He has authority over it.
Question.
Yeah.
Now, if I decided to secede with my new government, with Robert and, everybody else over here, we decided we wanted to secede, and we had, maybe, about 10,000 citizens. Okay? That's that's awesome, right? Okay, so we can agree that 10,000 is at least fair. So we'll just go with 10,000 for now.
Yeah, sure.
It could be smaller, but it definitely doesn't need to be larger. And so, so we, secede, and we're doing all right, and the U.S. government's just like, we want them back. Can they just come over and start a war with us? I mean,
no. Listen, if you secede from the U.S. government and you don't violate their rights, you don't go into any acts of aggression against them, all the ground you claim is privately bought, you declare yourself a state, there will be no moral reason for the U.S. government to invade.
So,
obviously.
Wouldn't you say the same courtesy should be extended to every American citizen, that as long as they don't do anything wrong, the government should never interact with them whatsoever?
But I already said that. If you never violate, if you never initiate force, you would never notice the government being there. You're not even forced to pay.
Right.
So I already said that. Like, if you don't use force, they won't get to you.
Now, I know this is really far-fetched.
Okay.
But what if, my small community that's still part of the U.S. wants...
Oh, no. Okay, so you didn't secede.
Okay, no.
They're still geographically located in the same area.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So what if my small community says, we would prefer to be run by the government, or by our local government? And so we don't really want to recognize national anything.
Secession. This is called secession, right?
No. I mean, we're not paying for the federal government. We're only paying for the local government. So would only the local laws, could we choose to only have the local laws applied to us because of the fact that we're only paying for it as a community?
Really? You're not paying for federal government? That's amazing.
No. We decided we don't want it. It's not really helping us.
Okay, but they are still providing services.
No. They're not providing any services. The local government is taking care of everything. We're able to better take care of our money and keep track of it. What if our local government was more, actually handled everything that we needed them to handle? We didn't feel like we were wanting of anything from the federal government, and we decided we wanted to do that with VVRT.
Well, in general, I support secession as long as the situation is an improvement for the protection of individual rights. So I don't support secession when it's done to create a new dictatorship, of course, because there will be just aggression. But in general, I don't think there's anything in the objectivist philosophy against people seceding from a government they don't recognize, they don't want to pay for, that is oppressive in some way. So, like, I can't tell you the number. I'm not going to go with 1.
Why not?
Why not?
Honestly, because the moment you go to 1, I think that it's getting real tricky when it comes to law.
Now,
I'm sorry. Like, that might be the best answer ever, but honestly, I can't imagine it even. Like, it seems so arbitrary to have everyone have their own courtroom, for instance.
It's not arbitrary.
Here's the thing, and I disagree with one part of your argument, and I think it's very, very, very relevant, especially because we are objectivists, and you and I believe in an objective definition of words. Now, the definition of secession is the action or process of inheriting a title, office, property, etc. Now, if we were to just take our local government as our arbiter, because we wanted to pay them, we voluntarily donated to them. Now, technically, they're not inheriting any title. They've already had that title, so it technically wouldn't be secession.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not familiar with that, but okay, that I believe you.
Okay, so here, let's take it a little bit further. So if I want to have this local government only be my my only arbiter, and we deal only with them, that's okay, and it's not technically secession because they're not inheriting a title. What if several communities wanted to do that? I mean, obviously, if it's okay for my community, it could be.
Yeah.
Okay, so technically, you're all right with polycentric government.
I'm not familiar with the term, but if you mean
Robert.
do I support multiple towns seceding? Well, the same morals would apply. So.
But it's not secession. They're not inheriting a title.
Oh no, but like they are part of the U.S. right now, right?
They're still.
No, realistically, Lauren, that is secession. They're taking the title of governance from.
Oh. Okay, well then continue. Keep talking.
Okay,
Right.
yeah, okay.
Right,
So the same morals would apply, like the
Right.
same, of course. Like I don't have any
Okay.
reason to object it. Yeah.
You do acknowledge that we have multiple different arbitration systems that are going to be in place in the Alsace-Lorraine situation. You got the French and the German guy, both having an altercation in Alsace-Lorraine. You got three different governments that have have two different citizens who are involved, and then the property is actually owned by Alsace-Lorraine. Okay.
Well, honestly, I would say that if you go to Alsace-Lorraine, that law applies to you, and that is not considering like extradition. But let's say you rob someone on the street in Alsace-Lorraine, they have a certain penalty for robbery, you will get that penalty, and then later on we can talk about, are we going to send him to the French, or can he put out his time in Germany? But I would say that the Alsace-Lorraine law would be like the most important one.
Well,
Governing, right?
As it actually happens, what will happen is that you'll see, if depending upon the crime, that you will have the State Department from the French government and the State Department from the German government. They will convene with the representatives of Alsace-Lorraine and have a discussion about how the situation is going to be handled. Okay? Now, this has been done several different times, depending upon who owned the location and so on, but basically what happens is you get what's called repeat dealings. And through a process of repeat dealings, you will see that a standard system of order of operations as to how things work is made. It becomes a standard norm of how we deal with things. It's similar to the people getting half of the booty on the found wreckage of a lost ship. Okay, where you get 50-50. So these repeat dealings create what would be considered, in my mind, objective law, because it's what has stood the test of time. It has actually been tested that, we tried this particular method, and then we found something that actually works.
Well,
and repeat the same process. Now, this occurs between countries, okay, and you're apparently fine with it occurring between countries. Otherwise, you would say that there should be a one world government, okay. So you're accepting of the principle that there are sometimes differing rules in different communities that are negotiated when you have some bleed over where there's you're not sure which one is in charge, which one is in effect. Like if the German guy kills the French guy in Alsace-Lorraine, and the penalty for murder in France is being put on a guillotine, let's just say for the sake of argument, then what'll happen? Well, those people in France will have their arbitration with the government of Alsace-Lorraine, and the German council will come over there and they'll say, hey, wait, you're not killing my guy, and they go back and forth and they figure it out. All this stuff.
I got a few comments. First off, I don't support every how do you call it, like talks between countries about punishment. Like if you ask me if a French guy kills a German guy in Alsace-Lorraine, I think Alsace-Lorraine should have a law against murder, and I think they have like a monopoly on what to do with him. Like they could of course choose for like diplomatic reasons to let him sit out his punishment in France. Like I know all that, but I think you're conflating standardized law with being objective. So while in many cases standardization does prove to be more objective than, let's say, like random law or arbitrary law, sure, but it's not the same. So
Let me ask you a question.
So what you're saying about like you would have to support a one world government, that's a little bit corny, because I ideally would support all of the world to be governed by a law respecting individual rights. I just think it's quite impossible, but if it would exist, I would be glad. Like if every country in the world would accept individual rights as their motto and build their laws upon that foundation, yes, that would be my ideal. But I think it's a little bit far-fetched, right?
Right, but if everybody accepted that, then you wouldn't need to have some one person or any a group be in charge of running it, because we'd all do it.
Yeah, okay, but then you would have like different groups giving their interpretation of individual rights, but it would be within
we all agree.
Well, if everybody would agree on everything, then nobody would ever initiate force, right? So
right.
That's why I say it's a little bit far-fetched. So I didn't want to use it.
So, in the case of the Alsace-Lorraine thing, you said that that Alsace-Lorraine should have a rule, and that the rules should be followed according to Alsace's claim.
That's what I would say.
Now, what is it that makes Alsace-Lorraine's rules have authority there?
Well, because that government would then be voluntarily funded by the people living there. The people live, from Alsace-Lorraine, right?
But the Alsace-Lorraine government is the only government there, is basically the claim, it's the government that has been chosen for that particular region, therefore it has got authority to do so. Is that what you're saying?
Well, okay, are you talking about like Alsace-Lorraine now, or are you talking about a laissez-faire society in Alsace-Lorraine?
Well, it can't be a laissez-faire society if it's got a government that's monopoly. But,
well, if you would take my example of government, and that would exist in Alsace-Lorraine, I would say the reason they have a right to trial that guy for murder would be because the people from that country have voluntarily donated to this government. The people don't want murder. The people are against initiations of force because they recognize individual rights. If you come onto their land and you don't abide by their laws, they will charge you.
Okay, so it's actually related to land ownership then, is that correct?
Well, in this case, when you're talking about the geographical area, like we're still working with borders, right? So,
right.
Excuse me, so the moment we're still having borders, yeah, then it's of course about land. That's obvious.
It's the property right thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when we say the word ownership, does the word ownership mean to you that I have the authority to control what it is that I own?
I think I know where you're going, but I'm going to say yes. Yeah.
Okay. So the idea that someone else has the authority to dictate the rules that exist on something that I own, my property, doesn't make objective sense. If I own it, then I have the right to decide how it is used. So
you're talking about some guy murdering someone in your backyard, for instance.
If someone comes onto my property and he ends up killing somebody else on my property, then I've had to have had either an agreement with them ahead of time for them to be on my land, or maybe they were on my land as trespassers, or whatever. It is still my land, and I therefore have authority in that land. Okay? Now, if I have made an agreement with a particular person to be a judge to handle disputes on my land, that's certainly one thing. But when we're dealing with all these different potential situations, what I find is that the people that come from your particular perspective believe that there's going to be a rogue group or a rogue person who will say, you're on my land and I can kill you just because you're on my land. And although that could potentially happen, market forces prohibit it from being maintained. In fact, will prevent it from happening again in the future. Just like punishments certain types of punishments will lead to less, it disincentivizes certain activities. So if people find out that, hey, every time that you end up raping somebody, that you've given carte blanche to be the experimental subject of drug trials and virus checking and things, testing and things like that, well, then maybe they don't do those types of activities. So by the fact that you have repeat dealings with other people, you create rules just like they did in the merchant law and in common law. These laws form and they become the standard for the different parts of the society. It is not just complete chaos.
No, okay.
It is a spontaneous order, and what spontaneous order does is actually achieve the most optimal path through a particular problem.
Well, okay, I like to get into what you said about like having authority on your land.
Yes.
Because authority doesn't mean I can do everything I want. Like authority doesn't mean I can like do everything to everybody who's on my land. You still have to respect individual rights, right? Like I come onto your land, you can't just do what you want to me. Like you have authority on your land, you have control over your land, but you have to respect my rights, given that I was not a trespasser, I didn't like initiate force or whatever. Of course, you have the right to defend yourself if I'm a danger to you or your family. That's obvious. So saying authority, I agree with, but authority doesn't mean I can do whatever I wish just because I own this piece of land.
Okay, well,
So-
that's making a straw man, though, right?
Is it?
Because if the government theoretically has authority, you're certainly not going to say that they have the ability to do anything that they want to.
No, of course not. So what would happen is this guy kills someone on your lawn. Well, first off, you can shoot him if he's a danger to you. So that will be within your authority because it is your land and he was like threatening you and doing all these heinous acts right in front of you. So there will be one right you would have to defend yourself and kill the guy. Like that would probably be moral and defended it with any judge who would get away with it. So in that sense, you would have a lot of authority. But let's say you capture the guy and you like tie him up to a tree. The moment you start like executing a punishment on him, that's when I would say you're violating the objective law that the government wants to enforce, and that objective law would have to be based on individual rights. So it would have like a higher purpose in that sense, right? So the moment you start dishing out individual punishments, you're basically diminishing the objectivity of the law. So that would be your wrongdoing. The moment you start putting him in a dungeon or whatever, you can defend yourself. You can, make sure he cannot do any harm, and then it would be fair to say let him be judged by objective law, the law that I respect, the law that respects my rights, and that's how I would look at it. Like, so authority, yes, but not everything you want. But right. I think, like, you're not saying that, right?
No, but
no, okay.
What I'm saying is the person who determines which system of arbitration that occurs according to what your understanding of the Alsace-Lorraine example was should be the person who owns the property.
Well, there's a difference between because the Alsace-Lorraine government doesn't own every piece of the land that we consider to be Alsace-Lorraine. Like, ideally, 99% would be privately owned, and the government would have like 2 or 3 ministries, right? So they wouldn't, the government would not be the owner of the land, and that's why they have the authority. The government would be the authority to implement objective law on the land of the people who have voluntarily donated to them, and those people in Alsace-Lorraine which have not donated to them, they can never be initiated against with force, but they can still be held to the standard of individual rights, and I don't think that's a violation of rights. So, listen, I'm not a law professor, right? So,
right.
We have to figure this out. I'm not saying there are no gray areas, there are no
but the only thing
difficult issues here. There are situations where you might have to do more than you want to do on your lawn because a group of people is attacking you. For instance, of course there are mitigating circumstances.
Hey, now, just so you know, we've reached the end of the time for the show, but there is a show that follows that I host called After Hours, which is basically the Voluntary Virtues After Hours show. We continue any sort of discussions that we didn't complete here, and you're certainly welcome to come join us there. And I can get Lauren the link, and we can try to connect you in there.
Ooh, that would be exciting if it works.
We would love to have you join. But if you aren't going to be joining us, I got a couple points. So, are you going to come on, or are you going to?
Well, like I want to try, but like, can I stay in this call because it took me quite some time to get into this call? So.
Unfortunately, because of the fact that the show has to be a certain length before you can't go longer than a certain length.
Yeah.
It's really important that we go ahead and close it over. And for anybody watching, certainly come to the Voluntary Virtues Network and pull up the live events section, and you will see that the new show will be starting here momentarily. It takes about 5 minutes to get the show going. So,
okay.
I am going to have to pass on the after-hours show, but you should try and get Urnez there. I will link you guys up with him. Thank you, Urnez, for coming. This was such a great discussion, and I'm always glad when my friends get to meet my other friends. Like, it always makes me really happy.
Yeah.
One last thing before we go, if we don't end up getting you back connected, the things that I would point out to you is this: that law existed prior to government, and it was still objective law. Number two, governments are made out of people who are still just as fallible as the individuals that you were talking about, who would have made unobjective law in their individual cases, and the potential of having every single person in a specific geographic area suffer the penalty for those small group of people misappropriating their rules and doing them in the wrong way and not following objective law is a significantly greater risk. So by distributing your losses, you're potentially making a better choice. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Again, thanks for joining us. Thanks everybody for watching, and we hope to see you join us again on the After Hours show. I'll get those links to you, and hopefully, Lauren, if you could try to facilitate that, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, guys, I want to thank Urnez. We're going to have you back hopefully soon on the Voluntary Virtues Roundtable show, and I hope you do stick around for the After Hours. So to everybody else out there, I want to thank you guys for checking out Voluntary Virtues. As you guys know, every single Tuesday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you'll find us here ready to go, trying to challenge the status quo and just the brain to go outside that little box of life that we are often stuck in, going to work and coming back home and dealing with family. You get caught in that box. Hopefully we can get your mind to a little bit more spur kicked into that. So, and I want to thank everybody because we all grow together as a team, basically. I didn't have to speak much tonight, and I learned a lot just listening to the discussion, and I want to thank you for that great contribution. So I will see you guys next Tuesday night, if not before that, here on Voluntary Virtues. Thank you guys so much, and make sure you guys check out the After Hours. I'll put the URL over on this link in the description section just in a few minutes. All right.